what's up you guys, this is Warframe Guy Plays, and today on the Quick Draw, you can blow the way you want to when we take a look at the Zarr. Okay, so remember like 6 months ago when I called the swapping mechanic on the Stradivar the balls on a dildo? Kinda pointless for the whole process, but I guess it's nice it's there. However, this time DE got it fucking right. The Zarr has meaningful alternate fire modes that completely change the way you play, and with the most recent update, you can actually play instead of constantly dying due to the changes in self-damage in cannon mode. So let the celebration begin. Now, you can pick up the Zarr's blueprint in the market for 30,000 credits, but just be aware that it will cost you 1,800 kuva and a fully built Dragoon, as well as requiring Mastery Rank 5 to craft. Now, if you've invested too much into your Dragoon and just can't part with it, you can always pick this up in the market pre-built along with a weapon slot and a catalyst for 225 plat. It's also available in the Continuity collection, but there is a shit ton of stuff in that, so I'll let you check that out for yourself. Now, its primary damage type shifts depending on which fire mode you're currently using. In cannon mode, if the shell makes contact with the target, it will deal impact damage. However, the actual explosion itself is blast based, and as we know, blast has some issues with ferrite armor, but does excel against fossilized infested units. And as for its barrage mode, which doesn't really have any of its stats listed, I'm gonna defer to the wiki since I can't find any data mines and have absolutely no clue how to accurately measure this in-game without wanting to kill myself. Its listed primary damage type is puncture with a splash of impact and a small chunk of slashing. As we know, puncture is great against armored units, but does suffer against shielding. So with what seems to be a mishmash mix of weaknesses and resistances, as always, I would recommend using the appropriate elemental combo in order to bridge the gap and deal the optimal amount of damage. Now, for those of you who have never used the Stradivar, the Zarr adopts a similar mode swapping mechanic. By hitting the alternate fire key, you'll be able to swap between the different modes. If you have no clue what your alternate fire key is, I would highly suggest checking your keybinds. Mine is currently set to the click on my mouse wheel. So, starting off with its cannon mode, this fires off a projectile that once making impact deals blast damage in a 5-meter radius. Upon its explosion, it then releases 6 more bomblets very similar to the Call Star. However, unlike the Call Star, these bomblets retain more of the original trajectory of the initial projectile, fanning out behind the impact point, unless of course you make a direct hit on your target or it collides with standing terrain. Then instead it will fan out from that point, much like a standard ricochet. Each bomblet does 50 points of blast damage in a small radius, like 2 to 3 meters small, and scales with mods just like the initial explosion. Also note, these bomblets do not inflict self-damage like the initial explosion does. Moving along, its barrage mode turns the Zarr into a close-range flat cannon that fires off 10 pellets, dealing 80 points of damage apiece. Now, keep in mind that while it does have innate punch through and no damage fall off, it also has a limited range of 15 meters max, and an insane spread. Now, statistically, it's quite interesting as its supplemental stats can give you a couple different avenues for modding. It has a 20% status chance, which you can use to pump up its potential for crowd control effects, or with the right combo of mods, you can take its 15% critical chance and its 2.5 times critical multiplier and give yourself the potential for insane damage spikes, which, unsurprisingly, is what I decided to do. Now, the last thing that I wanted to point out, which I find really interesting, is the fact that it has a unique reload mechanic. Now, I may be wrong on this one, but I do believe that this is the only weapon currently in game whose reload time is based on the number of shells in its mag. The listed amount accounts for reloading all 3. However, manually reloading before you empty your clip does cut that down. Now, I did frame by frame measurements, and at its base, reloading a single clip without any speed modifiers takes about 1.3 seconds, with each additional clip taking another 0.5, which totally incentivizes you to make sure that you're reloading in between each encounter. Now, speaking of being incentivized, can we talk? Okay, so one of the things that I absolutely love about the Zarr is the fact that you are given solutions to 2 very different situations. You have cannon mode to clear out large groups of enemies before they get too close, and you have the barrage mode to quickly strike down enemies who decide to rush you. Unlike the Stradivar, whose alternate fire modes just didn't really feel worthwhile swapping back and forth over, the Zarr literally says if you use cannon mode within 5 meters of you, you will die. Or if you use the barrage mode over 15 meters, you won't deal any damage. The Zarr makes a very clear-cut distinction as to what each mode is made for, and I can get with that. See, I wholeheartedly believe in sex brain. When mine is on, feel free to call me a slut and don't hesitate to smack me around, but also, do not be surprised if I slap you back. I I'm down for being dirty and disrespectful. Drill me, pound me, I am more than up for a little bit of abuse. However, the moment sex brain is switched off, you put me back on my pedestal, mind your pleases and thank yous, and the only physical contact should be snuggles, cuddles, and nuzzles, and be very aware that I expect it regularly, because much like the Zarr, with a flip of the switch, the situation completely changes. I may be your bitch in the bedroom, but you damn well better remember that I am your boss everywhere else. Now, with that little PSA, let's get back to the quick draw. So all in all, the Zarr is exactly what I had been looking for in an alternate fire weapon. Two very distinctive modes that feel really awesome swapping back and forth from, and its reload animation is pretty fucking sweet. It even has an innate V-slot to help ease you into some of the more intensive builds. Now, while I wouldn't say it's the top tier for explosive launchers or shotguns, the weapon itself has a ton of personality. And let's face it, with the massive roster of weapons that Warframe is building up, we already have the boring standards covered. So it just goes to show that the more you put out, the more creative you have to get to keep us wanting more. So thank you all for watching another episode of The Quick Draw. If you haven't already caught it, be sure to check out my previous episode on the Twin Roga and the Orvis. Now, don't forget to do all the things that I asked you to do at the end of every one of these. And as always, love somebody, hurt nobody, and touch your body. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye!